Hello, chat. Welcome to the show. I didn't tell my wife that I'm about to stream, so she was taken by surprise, and she was like, "Okay, but I can't stay with the baby right now. I need to do other things." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay." So I had to stay with the baby for 10 more minutes, which is why I'm late. But I'm here now, and we're going to talk about interesting issues. So every morning I wake up, and I want to see what the left is talking about, because I'm not really that interested in the right when it's in power. I want to see the criticism for the people in power and where to get better criticism than from the left. Now, the interesting thing is that if I was to criticize Trump, I could actually make like legit criticisms that, most people can get behind. But when I look at what the left is criticizing, they're criticizing normality. They're criticizing the natural order of things. You see, like America for a while has gone insane. And they decided to stop applying certain laws. Like laws for immigration, right? Like there already are laws in order to prevent America from having mass illegal immigration. But they chose to stop applying them. And so when they begin reapplying them, the left is like, oh my goodness, is this fascismus? Oh, is Benito Mussolini in charge? No, this is like Italy. This is what happened in Rome before World War II. Oh no, the Republicans like now like Italian politicians. In reality, it's just like the law being applied. And so here we have one of the best examples of that, right? So Trump pledges. I love it. It's like, it's not the government, right? It's not like the Republican, but no. Trump, like him, the person. He woke up one morning and he said, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to deport all of the Hamas sympathizers. Much to Hassan Piker's dismay. Right? Like all the left are in shock. Like, how can we run America without the Hamas sympathizers? Like, we need them here. Imagine if China manages to take them. Like, no. Like, these are our Hamas sympathizers. What are you doing? And so, like, the United States president, by the way, I noticed this interesting thing. I don't know if it's Al Jazeera that does it or, like, a lot of other publications do it. But they start calling him the United States president. Like, if you guys remember, if you're old enough to remember his first term, they refused to call him president. It was like hashtag not my president. And they would just say Donald Trump. Donald Trump, right? They would never say like, but now they're actually saying the United States president. Goodness gracious. What has he done to our beloved journalists? Look, you can see that America is under a dictatorship because the journalists are writing what they don't want to write. He pledged to deport foreign university students involved in pro-Palestinian protests as part of a crackdown on alleged anti-Semitism. I love the fact that it's alleged. Like, motherfucker, they were talking about, like, anti-Semitism in universities before Trump got into office, right? It's interesting, like, when the ADL goes after Steam, there's no alleged there. Like, no, that's, like, the word of God. It's like, there is de facto, beyond any shadow of a doubt, anti-Semitism on Steam. But when it's about the university campuses, alleged. Alleged, right. Like, if I'm not mistaken, one of their articles and TikTok videos showing, like, Jewish students being unable to attend class because, like, the protests were there and not allowing them in. Like, they're citizens too, like, they pay money to go there. I'm just saying, right? Is that like a part of, is that anti-Semitism or is it something else so you can use the word alleged? Allegedly, like, what more needs to happen? Like what exactly should happen so that you'd be like, okay, yeah, no, like the left is kind of anti-Semitic now. I'm not casting moral judgment, by the way, right? I'm not saying it's right up, but I'm saying it is happening. Like this is a level of anti-Semitism a little bit more than a Pepe on Steam, It's just like a little bit more than some edgy kid playing Counter-Strike and, doing a ASCII swastika, which I understand, like, that is the genuine anti-Semitism, right? But if you organize a protest at a university where someone paid like $40,000 to get there, and he can't get in because of the protest, that's not anti-Semitism. That's freedom of speech, I guess. In an executive order signed on Wednesday, Trump said that the federal government would use all available and appropriate legal tools, right, just like what a fascist would do, to prosecute and remove perpetrators of unlawful anti-Semitic harassment and violence. Jewish students have faced an unrelated barrage of discrimination, denial of access to campus, common areas and facilities, including libraries and classrooms, and intimidation, harassment. Again, like, the thing is, there are TikTok videos of this. No one is denying it. Like, even the left are like, yeah, we did this. And the reason for it, like they're justifying it. They're not saying it didn't happen, right? Like no one is debating this. Like it is happening de facto, right? And the only conversation is like people saying, and that's a good thing, and other people being, no, that's horrifying, right? Like Trump is on the, oh my goodness, it's horrifying camp. And so punishment needs to happen, you know, like he's in charge and he's going to now punish. To start the punishing. It's so annoying that YouTube chat has failed to catch up. Let me see if I refresh the page, because I want to take a couple of notes from the chat. I want to see what you guys are saying. What are Khalifa's life will do? Isn't Khalifa the porn star? I find it so bizarre when I see porn stars that are simping for hardcore Islam. Because in reality, I don't think they're simping for hardcore Islam. I don't even think they know the 7 pillars of Islam. But it's the right thing to say, isn't it? It's what the left wants to hear. Like, if you tell those university students that you like hardcore Islam, they like you back. You know, you're a decent person. The actions don't matter. Words über alles. And so this is why you have, like, porn stars that, you know, would probably be in danger if they actually travel to the places where they advocate for, advocating for those places. Because they never have to go there. You know, their convictions are never going to be put to the test, but they are saying the correct things. Aiden Paladin is just a really stupid idea to go to any country where you aren't a citizen and start trouble. See, this is why I was saying that the left is against common sense. Like, what do you think would happen if you go to Germany right now, right? Like Germany, the most the most moral nation of the European Union, a bastion of democracy, a champion of human rights. And what else does Germany offer? It is like the most Western nation out of everyone, you know, like they are the ones that are casting moral judgment on other nations, right? Like they're perfect in every way. They're not like Trump. They're the opposite of Trump. They're against Russia. Like, again, it's the perfect nation when it comes to moral values. And so imagine if you go to Germany and you get with a visa to a university there, and you manage to do agitation and propaganda on behalf of the AfD. And let's say you're successful, right? Like, let's say you get like 100 other students, and you're pro-AfD, and you're doing rallies and marches, and you're preventing other German students from getting in the classroom. What do you think would happen? What would the kind and benevolent German government do, right? Like, what would the SPD and the CDU do about that? They would be like, well, you know, is that free speech? I mean, of course they should, absolutely. No, they would probably lock you up. They wouldn't even deport you. They would probably lock you up. They would find something that you're doing which is illegal, and it depends like how much problems you caused and how much they want to fuck with you. If you caused a lot of problems, like let's say you managed to expose some corruption from a CDU member, then they lock you up. They will find like some hate speech things. They will find like reasons. They would send people to beat you up, and when you defend yourself, they accuse you for inciting violence. Like, right? Like that's what happens in a normal and sane country like Germany. In the United States, they just deport you. Right? But like any nation throughout human history, throughout the time, like pick one, you know, like just spin the globe and point your finger somewhere. And where that happens, that nation, I guarantee to you, is not going to allow people to go there to cause agitation and propaganda against the establishment. This is not rocket science. This is not even controversial. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, even if you take it at a personal level, like, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's talk about the family, right? Like, you have a family that is very open-minded, right? And in that family, the wife and the husband and the kids, they all talk to each other. They all listen to each other. They do things in a democratic way. They hold no secrets from one another, right? Like, let's talk about that family. And let's say you go there as a guest. And as a guest, you start agitating the kids against the parents. And you're telling shit to the kids, and it gets them against the parents. And they kick you out of their house. Are they justified or not? Because I think they're justified, right? Like, you were a guest there. And you went to that house in order to be a cheeky little shit and to start trouble. And so, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Like, no one would blame the family for, like, telling you to fuck off, right? And so, if you're a student and you're going to another country to a university in order to study, then fucking study. You're not there to like, change the nation, to affect the policies of the nation. No, you're there to study, to learn. That's why you went there, right? Like, imagine going to China. Seriously, like this is mind-boggling, right? Imagine going to China and you start talking against Xi Jinping. And you went there as a university student. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you in China to complain about the regime if you went there with a student visa? Of course they're going to kick you out. In the best case scenario, by the way. In the worst case scenario, they arrest you. The Biden administration deported Robinson, but I don't think the yeah, like when they deported Robinson, I said that's the correct thing to do. Because a government has the right to protect its borders, right? So, like, the principle applies when it's the Democrats. The principle applies when it's the Republicans, right? Like, the principle is there, and I can't be against it because I'm a principled person. And I would say, no, like, the principle is that a nation can decide what foreigners get to come in and not for whatever the fuck reasons they want. If it was up to me, they could even say at the airport, I don't like your face. Fuck off. It's a good enough reason. You're going there as a visitor. It's a privilege, not a right. They can say your cock is bigger than Donald Trump. He doesn't want you here. If you're not a citizen, you fuck off. Now, obviously, if you do that a lot, then you're not going to get more tourists and other people visiting. It's true. But at the end of the day, imagine going to China voluntarily. China is not such a bad place to visit. Like, if you don't go there to start trouble, it's actually not such a bad place. Like, seriously, a lot of the stuff about China is true, and some of the other stuff is propaganda. It depends which part of China you want to visit. Like, it's not like North Korea, right? And it depends, like, your nationality. Actually, this is true for any country on Earth, right? Like, it depends on your nationality. It depends if you go there to start trouble. It depends if you're going there to start visiting. It depends where you're going. But I would rather go to China than to go to certain Middle Eastern nations. Like, China is a lot safer. Again, it depends where you're going. I'd rather go to China than India. Hands down. American outlier, China or India, where do you want to go? Destiny, basically, American outlier, is suggesting that Trump pledging to deport supporters of Hamas goes against their free speech, right? So, Destiny, which is a person that seems to be a master of the English legal system, the American legal system, right? Like he knows everything about fake electorates, and he's going to go in depth with the legislation, and he's going to cite like article number, right? Like he knows everything about the law. Like, if I ever get in trouble, I would get Destiny. In fact, when he got in trouble, the only reason he got a lawyer is because you can't represent yourself. But like, otherwise, I'm pretty sure like Destiny himself is more competent than the lawyer he got. And despite all that, he seems a little bit unable to understand how the First Amendment works. To be fair, a lot of MAGA people don't seem to know how the First Amendment works, because I saw one of the dumbest takes saying that foreigners don't have rights. And it's like, hold on a little bit, like, even since ancient Rome. Well, actually, no, in ancient Rome, like, in the beginning, foreigners didn't have rights. But, like, if foreigners didn't have rights with America, no one would do business with America. Like, no one would step foot in America, right? Like, not having rights means that if an American robs you, and you're a foreigner, you have no recourse against that. Like, no, you have rights in America. But this is not the problem. It's not that foreigners don't have rights. They're not being arrested for saying things, you fucking moron. Like, that's what it means to not have free speech. It would mean, like, if you go in America, and let's say if I show the middle finger to a cop, I would get arrested. While if an American shows the middle finger to a cop, he doesn't, right? Like, that would mean that the American has the right of free speech, and I don't. Which, don't get me wrong, like, it could exist in a different system. Like, a country can theoretically have, like, certain rights for foreigners and certain rights for citizens. But this is not what's happening. What's happening is that when you go and get a visa for a student, they do a background check on you, right? And after doing the background check, they want to see if you qualify. And if you qualify, then they do an interview. And they ask you things. Why do you want to come to America? What do you like about America? What do you know about America? What type of person you are? You know, like that's what they ask. And if you were to tell them, I want to go to America in order to do agitation and propaganda, and I'm a supporter of Hamas, they won't let you in. They will deny your visa. The Democrats would probably deny your visa as well. Any type of person would deny your visa if you say that. So why is it bizarre to realize that, okay, well, if you lie to them and then you go to America and you stir up shit, they will deport your ass. It's not a free speech issue. It's on your fucking visa TOS. Like when you go there, it specifically says that if you are a danger to the public, sorry, not a danger to the public. Let me remember how it's phrased. If you're a public danger or a danger to the community. Hold on, let me check so I can give you the exact phrase, because the framing is interesting. So the first one is criminal activity. Like if you commit any type of criminal activity while on a visa, they take away your visa, so you have to go back. If you violate your visa's conditions, so like you say you go there as a student but you don't attend university classes, they send you back. Or if you're a national security or a public safety concern. And don't get me wrong, you know, when the Tesla dealerships are burning and you have people with Tesla cars being having their tires cut out, their windows broken, like a Tesla car is expensive. And so like why justify why an American citizen has to put up with that shit? Like, why should an American citizen have to put out... How is it in his interest that his car is being trashed? And there are people on Reddit justifying this. And the people that do this, they say they are doing it for political reasons. They're not saying, well, you know, I was just wanting to commit an act of vandalism and I wanted to hear the sound of a Tesla's window breaking. No, like, they go and they damage the Tesla specifically because they want to scare people from buying Tesla in order to get the Tesla stocks to drop because they're vengeful and vindictive against Elon Musk. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, I understand spite and vindictiveness more than any other person. However, there are consequences. And the consequences are like your visa is taken away. What? Like, you went to America to study. You didn't went to America to damage Teslas. Not to mention, you know, like the question is like, who is paying these people? Because they, like, no one does this for free. No reasonable person. Like, again, imagine that you want to go to study at a university in China. Like, let's say China has new technology that doesn't exist in America. Right? And you want to go to China in order to study and be an expert on that field. So you're going there. Why would you start agitating against the Chinese government? Unless you're paid. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Holy shit, American Outlier, you're going to run out of cash. Jesus. $50. Thank you so much. Simply put, foreigners have limitation on U.S. rights. We literally have a law called the Immigration and National Act, which grant legal immigrants natural rights. If you are robbed, you can press charges. How is it hard to understand? I wouldn't even say they have limitations. They're not arresting you, right? Like, there isn't like a two-tier system where if you're a foreigner, there are certain things that you do that are crimes, while certain things that Americans do are like, no. If you're a foreigner and you violate the visa, they just revoke your visa. They're not locking you up, right? Like, they're not putting you in prison. They're not putting you in jail. They're just sending you back. Unless your country is a prison, right? Like, unless there's like a prison country and they're sending you back, then yeah. How to have a good time in any country. Don't be poor and don't get involved in anything remotely political. I mean, this goes beyond common sense, right? Like, if you go to another country and you go there to live, you go there to study, whatever the case, you go there to work, if you stay there for more than a year, it makes sense that, number one, you learn the language of the nation. And the second thing is that you don't get involved in that nation's politics. You're not a citizen there. Like, why would you put yourself in such a precarious position where you're doing agitation and propaganda and being a chicken little shit and destabilizing the nation? Even if you're on the side of the justice or on the right side, right? And if you do, well, you're going to get deported. No nation on earth is going to tolerate you. And by the way, the left won't tolerate them either. Like, if you have a group of Eastern Europeans, like, let's say you have a group of 10,000 Ukrainians that are going into the United States, right, when Biden is in office. And then they start doing, like, agitation and propaganda, and they call it white supremacy, right? So, like, the Ukrainians are starting to fight against LGBT culture. They're starting to promote far-right values, and you know, they're doing marches, and they're destabilizing shit. Do you not think that if their leaders, like the leaders of the protest, would get deported, the left would agree? Like, I'm pretty sure Destiny would be the first one to say, oh yeah, well, you know, like most Ukrainians, they're decent folk, hardworking, they don't deserve what's happening to them. But the leaders are a problem. Yeah, they're agitating, they have to go back. Seriously, like, can you not imagine the situation? Because I think that's how it would look like. When you're on a boat, don't rock the boat. Again, I genuinely think that these people are paid. Like, there is no fucking way you can tell me that these people are doing it for free unless they're useful idiots. Because when you're at the university, I didn't travel abroad in order to study at a different university, but when I was at my university, the only thing that I cared was to study. Because you're investing so much time, so much effort, so much cash into finishing the university, you don't have time for political activism. Tell that to Lauren Chen and Southern. I had the exact same take. I had the exact same take when, I think it was, what was it? Molyneux? And there was another one, Lauren Southern. Lauren Southern and Molyneux, right? Like, they went to Britain, and they got deported. And I said, well, fair is fair. No, like, the British government has a right to defend its borders from political agitators. I agree with their takes, by the way, at the time. I think they were, like, pro-Brexit and shit, and I was like, yeah, no, like, their takes, yeah, I agree with them. But if the British government doesn't want them in their country, they have a right to say no. Now, if you're a British citizen and you don't like the fact that they kicked them out for political reasons, then, you know, you can voice your concerns. But, like, the government has a right, on principle, to say no to any person. As I mentioned before, you know, like, they can tell Molyneux to take his pants down. They can measure his cock. And they can say, well, your cock is a little bigger than Keir Starmer. And so we can't let you in because it makes Keir Starmer feel bad. That's a perfect legit argument to not let anyone in. Why? Because any argument for a country to not let someone in is legit. Going to another country is a privilege, not a right. The only exception is if you have citizenship in that country. If you have citizenship in that country, then they have to let you in. Like, no country on earth, as far as I'm aware of, has ever refused the right of a citizen to come in. Now, they can arrest them if they don't like the citizen, but they have to let you in. Hey, this is library. Oh, I see what you're doing. I remember that video. Oh my god. Whenever I was at the university, the only thing I cared about was lectures, food, and dodging my family working at the university. Yeah, correct, right? No wonder Romania got elections cancelled. What does one thing have to do with another? Like, first of all, as far as I know, the only people that Romania didn't allow in were, like, some hardcore Muslims that were warned by our mufti. Yes, like, Romania has a mufti, and our mufti went to the Minister of Internal Affairs and said, do not let these people in because they're preaching an extremist version of Wahhabism, and that version of Wahhabism is incompatible with the Islamic religion that we're teaching here in Constanța. And if you let them in, it will cause friction between us and our Romanian brothers, and that is not advisable. And so, like, those people were told, and that was pretty much it. That's the only case I know. Oh, actually, no, hold on. I think, like, the Romanian king wasn't allowed to come in. Yeah. This was under Iliescu, which was a borderline communist person, a friend of the Russians. That back then, it was okay to be with the Russians. And he didn't want to let the king come in because he was afraid that people will want monarchy. He couldn't compete with the king. The king was charismatic, well-spoken. And he didn't appreciate that, right? So he didn't allow the king to come into the nation. Brexit wasn't a call to violence, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a call to violence or not. A country, any nation on earth, has the right to refuse entry to any person for whatever reason, on principle, right? Regardless what the law says, on principle, if they don't want you to go there, then you shouldn't go there. Going to another country is a privilege, not a right. I keep saying this. Did he win? Who, Iliescu? He won three terms, actually. Defend foreigner borders, but not your own borders. Are you the United Kingdom? No, like all borders should be defended. Every single border should have like the same thing. A charismatic dictator. The king wasn't a dictator. He was actually deposed by the communists, and he was sent into exile. We had a constitutional monarchy, but he didn't even get a chance to rule because by the time he was getting elected, the dictatorship of I think Antonescu, if my history serves, took over, right? So like he was too young to lead the country at the time. It was a general that came, a marshal, I think, that came over and did some crimes against humanity during World War II. And then the king managed to depose him, and then the communists came, and he was sent to exile. So, I've just seen that Iran admitted that they were complicit with the Houthis. Well, why wouldn't they admit that? Like, the way things work in the Middle East is to display strength. And Iran is already in a precarious situation. They already think that the United States are going to do bad things to them in the future. And so they're like, yeah, sure, we did that. Because it makes them look good with other Muslim nations, basically, right? Like with other nations in the region, it makes them look good. With the West, it makes them look horrible, but they already look horrible with the West, right? So like at this point, they're morally decoupling from the West. They're Team Middle East and Team China. So that's why they would admit. Even if they aren't working with the Houthis, they will probably admit it. Like, there's no political reason to hide it. Were the Houthis nuked from orbit? I think Trump did say that he's going to punish them. So I didn't really look at what happened after that. But yeah, anyway, so like Destiny doesn't agree that people should be deported, and he's wondering where the free speech warriors are at. And my take is like, well, you probably murdered all the free speech warriors, right? Like you persuaded, you had very strong arguments against free speech for the last 10 years. And did it occur to you that maybe you did manage to sway people? And they're like, yeah, you know what? Like, why do we have free speech? But in all fairness, though, let me put it this way: like a lot of people don't understand. Like they think, especially when you look at the internet and you're looking at other people, they think that people don't change principles or opinions ever, right? Like someone makes a statement, and that statement is forever. But the reality is a little bit more complex. Like you can have a person that's a genuinely kind individual, right? So you have a person that likes to see the good in humanity. And that person goes around and he champions free speech and human rights. And, he then watches on television in horror as a firefighter gets shot. Right? And this traumatizes the person because he's a nice individual. He's got a family. He's thinking, wow, what if that happened to me? Or what if that happened to my son? That's so fucking horrible, right? And then he wants to see what Destiny has to say or any other streamer. And he tunes in and then listens to the streamer saying, you know what? I don't care. In fact, if you go to a Trump rally, you deserve getting it. Now that person that used to be a very tolerant individual, compassionate, well-spoken, articulate man, listens to an extremist like that, and it's going to change his worldview. It's going to change his mindset for a little bit. He's going to understand, like, hold on, I am kind and tolerant, but it seems that other people don't reciprocate. Right? So, like, I would have been compassionate if it happened to that guy, but if it happened to me, that guy would cheer it. So, therefore, I have to be a little bit less compassionate. And that's how you born extremists. That's how people change their view. It's not that he's a hypocrite, right? He was running on false assumptions. He was running on the idea that the same compassion and tolerance he had is going to be reciprocated by others. And then he finds out that no, actually others want to fuck with him. And therefore, he becomes afraid. He becomes scared. And his fear is justified by getting a crowd of people that are like-minded individuals, and they want to now fuck with the person that wanted to fuck with him. It's how the world works, really. It's not justifiable or anything. Like, I'm not saying this is how things should be, but what I'm describing is how things really are. Anyway. Molyneux is British. Isn't he Canadian? Then it wasn't Molyneux that got turned back. It was someone else. It's hard to remember because it was more than 8 or 9 years ago. But you guys probably remember. Maybe it was Brittany Pettibone or someone else. Anyway, like 2 political commentators, they went to Britain. And they got turned back at the border. And I remember making a video saying, well, I'm a principled person. Like, the borders should be defended. Any country has a right to choose who they let in or not. And that was one of those situations where, See, I thought that Stefan Molyneux is Canadian. Why are people trying to gaslight me, telling me that he's British? Because if he was British, then my entire argument falls apart. If he was British, no, they had to let him in. They can arrest him afterwards, because, it's Britain, right? But, they have to let him in, because he's a citizen. I think I would beat you in a spite contest. Well, I was arguing with the person that wanted to ban video games, right? Like, there was this person on Twitter which, wanted to ban porn. Like, this is the new moral trend now. It's like, all of a sudden, the pornography, which was acceptable for the last decade, has become unacceptable. And it's not like boomers that hate pornography, it's young men. Usually with crosses in their bio. And so, I was like, what exactly is pornography? And apparently, like, for him, his definition is that even if in a video game you have a fully clothed woman, if she's in a sexual pose, that's pornography, right? And that pissed me off a little bit. I don't like censors. Basically, like, him and Anita Sarkeesian want the same destination, but, like, they're rationalizing different. Like, one of them is like, no, what Anita Sarkeesian wants is godly, but she doesn't know. Like, she's a useful tool used by Jesus in order to make every single sexy woman in a video game into a man, so we can't masturbate. But, like, at the end of the day, people don't masturbate, so that's a good thing. And so, I was thinking, it's like, okay, this guy likes alcohol and tobacco. And he actually told me that, well, alcohol and tobacco built Western civilization, right? Like, that's his take. That's his understanding. And my take was that if I, like, legitimately, like, if he lived in my country and he behaved like that in my country, like, there would be people that would unironically fuck with his vices, specifically because they are his vices and no other reason. Like, we wouldn't try to come up with a moral reason or a virtue. No. We're fucking with you because we want to fuck with you. That's it. No reason required. We're fucking with you because you're a Karen and it feels good to fuck with you. And how we would fuck with him? I wouldn't ban his alcohol and cigarette, heaven forbid. No, I would start advocating to tax that shit. I would use every connection I have with my government to increase taxes on alcohol and tobacco. Why? Because I don't smoke and I don't drink. So fuck that guy. And then I would justify, like, go to environmentalist groups and say, hey, doesn't smoking cause CO2? Can't we increase the tax on that? I would want to see that guy taxed. And when that guy gets taxed, I would have the exact same feeling that I'm experiencing, the exact same level of dopamine that I'm getting when I'm playing video games, right? So all of a sudden, I agree with him. Look, we're doing a compromise. I'm not playing my video games anymore. I'm not getting my dopamine. But now I'm doing something that God isn't against. Taxing alcohol and tobacco. That's godly, right? Go fuck yourself. And so, tell me that you have a level of spite that goes beyond mine. Like, look into my eyes and tell me that you can be more spiteful than me. Because I don't think you can. I think, like, if you're an Eastern European, you reach a level of spite that transcends spitefulness. This is why most people in Eastern Europe aren't Karens. Because you need to have, like, a legitimate good reason to be a Karen. Because you know that the moment you fuck with people, you get fucked with. It's like an unwritten rule. Right? Like, if you mind your own business and you take care of yourself and your family, Eastern Europeans are very nice. They leave you alone. No one messes with you. But the very moment you become a Karen in public, people enjoy. Like, it's a pastime activity. It's a national hobby. We feel good in messing with people that are Karens in public. The last person that was a Karen in public was Lasconi. Like, she ran for president, and she basically said that if you don't agree with the definition of parent 1 and parent 2, you're a fascist. Not only did she got bombarded with laugh emojis on her Facebook page, but she was absolutely... Like, people that I know were voting for the counter candidate, not because they like the counter candidate, but simply because it's like, oh, who is she to call me a fascist? Like, I don't like the other guy. In fact, I hate the other guy. But he didn't call me a fascist. And I know it upsets her if I vote for him, so therefore. And I think like the other guy got like 5 or 10% extra simply because of her statement. And that's a healthy mindset to have. We don't care if the other guy brings on the apocalypse. Like, he can worship Satan. I don't know. But why did she have to say that? Why did she have to be a cat? Look what she did. That's the consequences of her actions, right? Like, she brought ruin to the nation when she could have just shut the fuck up with that particular take. Like, that take didn't have to come out of her mouth, right? Like, she did. It is what it is. It's like the spite in my country is like a force of nature. You can't stop it. You can't be against it. Like, you can prevent it by not attracting it. Yeah, literally. Well, no, actually, Russians do call people a fascist. Like, isn't Putin trying to denazify Ukraine, right? Like, no, the Russians will call you a fascist. That's fine. SRC Baker, thank you for the memberships. I appreciate it. Alcohol and Korean soldiers. Yeah. How are you spiting the EU for canceling your elections? Well, the vote isn't finished. Like, I guarantee to you the clown pill candidate is going to go through. Like, from what I'm seeing on the streets, from what I'm hearing among the people, like, we can find someone more crazy and dangerous than Georgescu. Like, we can find a real clown. That's why people aren't really protesting. Well, they're not protesting for 2 reasons. Like, number 1, the presidential elections aren't that important. Number 2, people don't really think that the European Union intervened. They think, like, this is internal corruption. Like, the National Liberal Party is losing its grasp of power, and they're desperate. And the third reason, actually, is that the elections still are on. So, like, people can still vote. I don't know what to say. Like, when you cancel, like when you're trying to save people from their own vote, how do you think they're going to vote, though? You know, like in the United States, when you take away Bernie Sanders for the Democrats get cocked. And they will vote for Hillary Clinton anyway. If you did that in Romania, like, no, seriously, like, this is what would happen in my country. If you did that, if you removed Bernie Sanders from the primary, all those Democrats would vote Donald Trump. Out of spite. And they would say, like, no, I hate Donald Trump, but I hate the Democrats more because they're treating me like a child. They're basically taking away my option, and they're basically implying... The same thing with Kamala Harris, right? Like, if they managed to get her through without primary, everyone would vote Donald Trump. They'll be like, no, this is not the way. Like, I will suffer 4 years, but I want things to go back to normal. If we allow this to continue, then 4 years from now, they will do the same shit. And that's the mentality that people have. They're basically saying, like, no, we need to send the message. And if we can't send the message, we'll send it next time. But we'll send it even worse. And if next time doesn't work, then, you know, like, it keeps building up and building up. Then eventually you're going to end up with, like, an actual comedian. In office. The problem is nobody will fight the revolution. Well, nobody will fight the revolution because most people didn't actually like that guy. Like, most people were voting for that guy as a middle finger to the government. The thing is that there are a lot of middle fingers to be had. You know, like, you can pick up another middle finger, so there's no need for a revolution. Especially not with the presidential election, right? We're in Romania. We don't have, like, the same presidential powers that the United States has, or another country. The president is more or less a glorified diplomat. But if you want to remember revolution, remember when that collective club caught fire. That was a revolution. I mean, well, not really a revolution, but, like, people were legitimately pissed and angry. And so, like, when people actually do get legitimately pissed and angry, well, you do get protests. And you didn't get protests now because people mostly don't care. Again, like, the problem is you can't make people to care or justify when they care or not. But if you keep pushing and pushing, they start to care, which is probably why they didn't ban Simon from the running, right? because they would probably realize, okay, well, we're pushing it, we're pushing it too far, right? Like, we already pushed it up to this point. If you keep pushing it, then maybe we are actually going to get people upset. And so, yeah, even the system realizes this. I can't wait to vote for JD to drag his balls over the EU. I don't know if he will, though. Like, you gotta understand, and Mark Rubio actually said this, that in foreign relations, it's not really if you like the person or if you like the people or if you like the values of the other nation. In foreign relations, it's like what I can do for you and what can you do for me. And the United States still needs European Union. Like, for instance, in the EU, we are still one of the world's biggest manufacturers on boats, right? So, like, we have a lot of shipyards. We still build a lot of boats. If the United States happens to go to war with China, guess what they need? I mean, sure, you can build your own boats, but it's a lot cheaper to just get them from the EU. And so maintaining positive relationships with the European Union is still in America's interest. It is what it is. It's historical ties. Like, the world commerce works both ways. Unless you guys manage to annex Canada. If you annex Canada, then you actually don't give a shit. But take into account, like, it's important to have allies in a war because you can use them as a stick, right? It's one thing to go to war with America. It's another thing to go to war with the West. And more importantly, it's like American soldiers not dying. I mean, it's the same thing in Russia, right? Like, they're bringing North Koreans, and the North Koreans are dying rather than Russian soldiers. Looks good on paper for Putin, right? It's like, well, we're not bringing home Russian casket. And that thing is important. So, like, yeah, I don't think that J.D. Vance being elected is going to ruin relationships with the European Union. At the end of the day, these things, they don't even work at the top level. Like, the way it works is kind of like Israel does it, or like the European Union does it. You found NGOs in the other nation, right? So, like, the way it should work is, like, for America, instead of using U.S. aid, I mean, you actually did it, right? You used USAID in order to make Europe the way it fucking is. Because Europe wasn't the way it is right now when I was born. No, like, Europe was actually like America, with European values, encouraging democracy, like genuine democracy, encouraging referendums, encouraging people to have free speech and free expression. Like, that was the way the European used to be. And then the Democrats, using USAID, you used NGOs, you used journalists, you used university professors, you used various other grifts, and you supported politicians in order so that Europe is the way it is today. So, like, if you want to unfuck Europe, you can just change the way USAID works and do the right-wing grift, and then you have a different Europe. But the thing is, like, there's no political will for it. Like, why would America, even Donald Trump, why would he want Europe to actually be based? No, like, any politician worth his salt, like, wants the other powers on the world to still be powerful, but not as powerful as them, right? Like, they still want Europe to just do business with America and not tariff them. They don't want Europe to actually have its own military, to actually have its own space program, and to actually have its own social media. Like, it's not in America's interest. American Outlier, my dude, the politician coup that happened to Joe Biden was such a mindfuck to my relatives. You could see the malfunctioning in their faces when I explained to them that was a undemocratic process. Well, it was an undemocratic process, right? Like, the way I understand things work in the United States, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is with my limited understanding, is that the Republicans have a primary and the Democrats have a primary, right? So, like, you register as a Democrat or a Republican, and then, like, the party sends you 6 people that have a debate. And those people, they start speaking Spanish to impress you. They look at American Outlier and they use a southern accent, and American Outlier is, oh my god, this is just like my people, right? Like, so they're trying to impress you. And then you vote for the one that you like, and the one that you like then goes off and competes against the guy that won from the Republicans. I thought this is how it works, but apparently no. Apparently now, like, the Democrats go like, no, you get Kamala Harris. And I'm pretty sure a lot of Democrats were like, fuck this shit. At best, they stood home. At worst, they actually voted for Donald Trump. Those debates happened before the primary. See, I told you I'm not really used to this. Like, I'm not well versed into it, but with the little knowledge that I know, I think it's how things work. I don't think there will be a big of a separation between America and Europe. Europe has always done what America told them. Exactly, that's another thing, right? Like, the reason Europe is the way it is because America told them to do this. Like, America told, it's like, well, you need to support Ukraine. And Europe went, yes, boss. Like, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Europe doesn't have a foreign policy. Like, we have America's foreign policy. Everything that America hates, we hate too. Everything that America likes, we like as well. If Europe had a foreign policy, then it would look at, okay, who are the big players on planet Earth? Well, you have the Americans with their military, you have the Chinese with their manufacturing, you have Russia with their resources. And then you have India, which is the most powerful thing on Earth. They get H-1B visa workers. We shouldn't touch those because it upsets the Americans. Like, we can destabilize the world economy if we try to recruit Indians and subjugate the Americans. But if you actually would have a Europe with a foreign policy, the way it would work is like, okay, how can we leverage China against America? How can we leverage America against China? How can we deal with Russia and America so that we get everything we want from both sides? It's like, okay, America is pressuring us now. Let's see what the people from China think. Like, can they help us and leverage some strength against the United States? Can we leverage some strength from Russia and use it against China? I mean, this is the way you would actually have foreign policy, right? Like, you wouldn't have ideology. You wouldn't give a shit. You're like, okay, who are the top players on planet Earth? And that's it. That's the only thing that matters, right? Like, what nation does what? And then you also found NGOs in America. You found NGOs in China. You found NGOs in Israel. You find it in all the other places so that they can help their government understand that the European Union is good, benevolent, and just. This is what China does. Like, where do you think environmentalism in Europe is coming from? Russia does the same. You know, Russia is LARPing, like, oh, they're a Christian nation, right wing, base. But they have more mosques than any other Christian nation. Although, no, you know, I may actually say that incorrectly because, shit, I don't know if they have more than the UK now. But yeah, like, under Putin, a lot of mosques have been built. And also, they have, like, different ethnicities. I think they have more languages and ethnicities than the United States. They're a very diverse nation. But, like, they present themselves as, you know, like a cisgender, straight, white, male avatar of the nation. Because that's how you need to present yourself in the world. Like, you need to have a certain image that you present yourself to the world. The image that Europe presents itself is like, okay, we're environmental friendly and we're good, decent folk. Okay, compared to the Chinese that are like the manufacturing place in the world. The United States, which have like the biggest military. Like, come on. No one hates Russia in Eastern Europe. Dude, are you fucking kidding? Like, in my country, to be accused of being a Putinist is a slur. Like, your political career is over if you're even remote. Like even... Let me put it this way. Even the guy that supported Georgescu is anti-Russian. Like, what do you mean, like, there is no one hates Russia in Eastern Europe? Like, I would understand that statement about France. I would understand that statement about Greece. About Hungary. But, like, Eastern Europe? Are you fucking insane? Like, have you studied a little bit of history? Because it's justified. Like, the animosity doesn't spring from the ether. Like, let me put it this way. In the United States, right, like, black people still dislike white people because of slavery. And how many years ago was that? Okay? Now let's see how many years since the last Russian atrocity was caused in Eastern Europe. Right? And then, like, let's look before that how many years it took. Like, there's almost, like, one Russian atrocity in Eastern Europe every 50 years or so. Like... There are Eastern European countries that sympathize with Russia. Hungary is one of them. But, like, they sympathize with Russia because they don't have natural resources, so they need to get it from somewhere. And then there's other countries in Eastern Europe that are doing politics the way I explained. It's like, well, you don't really care as much about ideology, opinions, history, or anything. You're just leveraging one country against another. And so you're, like, leveraging the Russians against the European Union. You're leveraging NATO against Russia, and you're basically trying to get the best deal out of all the transactions that you do. Havy, don't know if it was asked, but thoughts on Putin basically saying no ceasefire to Trump. As I already said, all these negotiations are done behind closed doors, and all of this is supposed to drive in public pressure, right? And so I'm not going to say anything until all of this is over, because the whole thing with Zelensky, I'm signing the contract, I'm not signing the contract. Okay, now I'm signing. And Putin, I want a ceasefire. No, I don't want a ceasefire. Now I want a ceasefire. I don't fucking know. Like, all of these are decisions that are said in front of the media in order to get the public agitated. I refuse to get agitated. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I think. And so, I'll wait for this to be over, right? Like, we'll probably get an answer in 2 or 3 months and see what's happening. But at the end of the day, you know, you can say, well, at least Trump tried. And I think, like, if Putin doesn't want ceasefire, then America is going to genuinely support Ukraine. Because up until now, and this is my view, right? Although it's a view that's shared by other politicians and even people from Ukraine, is that America's interest wasn't to win the war, and it wasn't to lose the war either. It was to keep the war going as long as humanly possible. And so, like, they were supplying enough aid for the Ukrainians so that they can hold, but, like, not actually win. And so I think that with Trump, no, he would actually want the Ukrainians to win. Like, he would genuinely, like, start sending them proper military help, and they would probably actually win. Because he wants the war to be over. And if Putin doesn't want to come to the table, like, he's actually going to make it in such a way that he's going to impose sanctions on Russia, amplify the aid to Ukraine so that he wants to come to the table. Eastern Europe must have Stockholm Syndrome. Well, look, when it's coming to, like, international politics, it's a little bit different. But it's kind of hard, you know, like, if you have a grandma that tells you stories about how Russians made a famine in her village, and how her friends died, and how, like, the women in those villages were raped by the soldiers from the Red Army and shit. You know, like, it's not like she's ever going to vote for a person that's, like, accused to be a Putinist, you know? I mean, she's still alive. Like she still remembers the atrocities, and she told them to her kids, who told it to their grandkids. So, like, usually it takes, like, 100 years or so for one of these historical plights to go away. But even then, his current strategy is to deny Ukraine and let them understand how weak they are. Yeah, but if Ukraine actually agrees with him, and he's like, all right, fine, we're coming to the table, we're debating. And then the ball is in the Russian court. The ball, where is the ball? It's in Russia's court. Right? So, like, if the Ukrainians want to debate, and they want peace, but the Russians refuse, well, then he's going to start fucking with the Russians. Because up until now, he was fucking with the Ukrainians. I think this is the way he does diplomacy. And probably, like, this is the way that you would actually get in real life if you zoom in and you have a couple. Sorry, not a couple, but you have, like, two people that are fighting and you want them to make up. Like, this is the way you do, right? Like, first you force one to come to the table and then you force the other. Poland's attitude towards Russia is about as friendly as the average Eastern European country at the moment. Yeah. I mean, Poland does have a very interesting history, both with Russia and with Germany. And this is probably why, like, Poland wants to have the biggest military, because they realize that the Germany are arming up again, and Poland is like, okay, well, maybe it's time that every single Polish person goes to the draft. Like Poland genuinely has historical grievances, like the Katian massacre. Their nation got invaded. Imagine this, right? Like, you're taken over by the Nazis, and they do atrocities over there, and you're living under occupation, and then the Russians come to save you, but they're not coming to liberate you, they're coming to just occupy you, right? So, like, they're just changing one occupation for another. Okay, you know what? Hold on. Fuck it. I will show you a video, which will probably have to get me to delete the stream. Over copyright, but I want you to see it. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, this is, just so you understand, the name of the anthem for Poland is Poland is Still Here. And if you don't know the history of Poland, I want you to stop doing whatever it is you're doing, right? And look at your phone, look at your screens, because I'm going to educate you bigots, right? Look at this shit. Hold on, not this shit. I did it by accident. This is a different video. I think these are actually made by the Polish government. And so they actually may be free for me to share. I found it. Alright, look at the history of Eastern Europe. And then try to figure out why Eastern Europe doesn't like Russia that much.
Nobody thought the war and its effects would last half a century for Poland. First, Germany attacks. Then Soviet Russia. We don't give up, despite being left on our own.
What's interesting is that the Allies never punished the Soviet Union for invading Poland. Like, this is an interesting thing, right? Like, they declared war on Germany for invading Poland. This is what actually started World War II. But they didn't declare war on Russia or did anything about it, even though they invaded Poland too.
We create an underground state, complete with a government, an army, schools, and courts. We suffer 2 occupations. The Germans murder millions of Polish civilians. The Soviets deport Poles in cattle cars to gulags in the east. They shoot over 20,000 officers during the Katyn massacre, and hundreds of thousands of Poles are forced into slave labor in the inhuman lands of the Soviet Union. Our army is reborn, moving west, where our soldiers are already fighting alongside the Allies. We conquer Monte Cassino. Our fighters wreak havoc and fear by air too. The Germans call us Black Devils as we crush their resistance. Paratroopers make their way to occupied Poland to support the underground state, while our counterintelligence acquires secret plans of the enemy. There are Poles who save Jews, despite the threat of the death penalty. We create resistance movements, even within the German concentration camps. We are the first to alert the world about the Holocaust. Though politics appear to be more important than human lives. And nobody listens to us. Polish Jews fight the Germans in the Warsaw Ghetto without even a chance for success. Our nation comes up from the underground and fights in the Warsaw Uprising. Break the German Enigma code, saving millions of lives. But in exchange for all that we do, we are betrayed. The free world distances itself from us, leaving us behind the Iron Curtain. Despite our scars from the war, we still resist. The Pope gives us strength. Workers' strikes spread throughout Poland. The communists lose. The Iron Curtain falls. The war is over. We prevail. Because we do not beg for freedom. We fight for it.
Yeah, so I think this is actually made by the Polish government. Someone in the chat said that it's propaganda. Like, obviously, some of the things are a little bit dramatized for heroism purposes. But no, like that is mostly accurate. Like, it is part of Polish history. They were under two occupations. They were betrayed by the Allies. They did fight with the Russians, who then committed atrocities upon them. And the message from the Pope, which Stalin asked, like, the Pope and what army, and the Pope was, I think, like, go with Jesus, and he, a lot of the people from the atheist-enforced Eastern Europe understood the message. Yeah, no, like, a lot of this stuff is true. The Katian massacre, shit like that, right? So when you're saying, oh, well, Eastern Europe likes Russia, notice how most of Russia's neighbors don't like Russia. Did you notice that shit? Right? Like for instance, if Russia tried to get Mexico to ally in a Russian alliance against the US, do you think Mexico would do that? What if China would ask Mexico to? To be fair, Canada might now. See, like, this is the thing. Like, that now you're antagonizing the a neighbor. So Canada may, I don't know. Probably not though, because you haven't antagonized them enough. But if you do antagonize them enough, then yeah, like that's how you get the same treatment that Eastern Europe has towards Russia. Most of it is historical. It's not irrational. See, like one of the things that I think happened with the Ukrainian conflict, which is a bad thing, is that it became part of the culture war. Like, you're a Democrat if you support it, you're a Republican if you're against it, right? Meanwhile, there are other wars that aren't cultural in nature. The war in Myanmar. Like, the Democrats and the Republicans think the same thing. They don't care about it. Even though it's a conflict, right? No, sorry, not a war. It's a civil uprising. But the reality is, like, for people in Eastern Europe, it's not cultural. Like, it's not the culture war, right? Like, there's no, like, two opinions. It's like, no, it's Russia. Whether they're right or they're not, it doesn't matter. Like for people in Eastern European, even if the Ukrainians, in a different universe, hypothetically, they would be the ones that are slighting Russians, and they would be in the wrong. Eastern Europeans would support Ukraine simply because it's against Russia. Like, we'll deal with you guys later, but, like, if you want to party against Russia, we're on. Like this is the mentality here. And again, it's done by historical baggage and grievances. It's not rational. I mean, no, actually, most of it is even rational. But some of it is even irrational, right? Destiny is struggling to get enough dates on Grindr to obtain a steady supply of man juice. A terrible predicament. I haven't actually followed this drama. Like, all I know is that he is involved in some scandals of sexual nature. The cause belli of World War II was the guarantee of Poland. The end of World War II was the occupation of Poland. Greatest victory. Don't forget, original annexation of Poland in the 18th century. Yeah, Poles usually got the short end of the stick historically, which is why they want to militarize now. Like, the moment the Germans are talking about militarizing, the Poles are like, all right, national draft. They're trying to become as technologically advanced as possible, and they're basically trying to keep up. They don't want to be placed in a position again where a World War II event can happen. Napoleon is favorably re-Frenched in the Polish anthem. I didn't know that. That's actually pretty cool. Why? Is it because he went into Moscow? I wouldn't be much more sympathetic to Poland than Romania, whose president is on a campaign saying, we don't know where the $100 billion went. Well, to be fair, the United States don't know either. If it's true, like, a lot of the aid money to Ukraine never left the United States, so it could have just been grifted by the Democrats and other NGOs. And then, of course, like once it gets here, it gets grifted again. This is Eastern Europe, by the way. Like a lot of people don't understand just how much corruption exists. Like even in America, most of the weapons that the United States is making right now, the way that they're designed to be made is so that it's extremely profitable for the manufacturer, right? Like so you guys like pay the military industrial complex more than it should. And they're also designed to work against people that don't have the same technological advancement as your own. Like I listened to a speaker which gave an interesting talk about how the Russians are keeping up with the NATO gear, and it's becoming an interesting arm race in the ground of Ukraine. Again, it's difficult to know like how much of it is true and how much of it is false, simply because of the fog of war. But like one example that he gave was like a drone that costs around $3,000 to make with a grenade attached can now destroy a tank that costs millions of dollars to make, right? And so the nature of the war is changing. It's like stuff that was extremely expensive and works very well against people that don't have the technology and know-how doesn't seem to work anymore. This is why the Houthis, for instance, are a problem against the United States, because they're using drones. And again, like a drone that costs $3,000 is being shot down by a missile that costs $100,000. And so, like, it's not. This is why the Israelis were upset about the Palestinians, right? Because like a lot of people were like, okay, well, if the Palestinians like launch their firecrackers at Israel and Israel can shoot them down, what's the problem? Well, that firecracker was very cheap to manufacture, while a missile that would hit it was in the terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sobieski and Romanians, Poles were not always friendly. Romania and Poles had like a relationship of like up and down, but like from what I know, like right now we're very friendly to one another. No grenade, but probably C4. Yeah, my bad. Sorry. But yeah, you strap like C4 on a drone, and you can destroy a tank that's infinitely more expensive than the drone, right? And so, like in a war of attrition, like this becomes a problem. Another thing that the Russians have done is like military gear from the United States. It requires a signal to be accurate, right? So like stuff like missiles, even other drones, right? Like you need a signal in order to to operate them. And the signal has like two disadvantages. Like number one, other people that are looking in for the signal can know. It's like, okay, well, you're launching artillery fire, right? And normally, like if you're fighting against someone that doesn't have the means and capabilities, well, it doesn't really matter if they know where the artillery comes from or not, because they can't respond. But if you're fighting against someone that has similar equipment, well, you're launching artillery fire, and then their artillery targets your artillery. And you don't want that to happen, right? Because you don't know where their artillery is, but they know where yours is, right? And so when you're launching stuff that has a signal, they can pinpoint to where the signal comes from. And another thing they can do is they can jam the signal. And so what the Russians are doing now is they're innovating, and they're attaching an optic cable to the drone. So the drone now looks like a little toy with like a string attached to it. And it doesn't emit any signal. It can't be jammed. It can't be traced, right? The Ukrainians are doing this shit too. And so, like, again, the war seems to move from stuff that was extremely expensive and high-tech, and it looks awesome, you know, like you can launch a missile from anywhere, and the missile hits with pinpoint accuracy. And that was, like, how people thought future warfare would be like, until they realized how the war in Ukraine goes, like, okay, but, like, if someone jams your signal, then the missile isn't accurate, and now people know where you're at, where you launched it from, and they have the same capability of launching missiles in return. Right? So yeah, it's a shit show. Like the interesting thing is looking at how the war is like. You know, like if World War III was to fight now, how would it look like? And the answer is kind of like World War One. Tanks don't seem to be as effective. Clustered groups of units aren't effective. So what is effective is trench warfare. Like you dig a lot of trenches. The number of soldiers in the trenches are sparse. The soldiers have like high mobility with bikes and shit, and drones, right? So like the reason you have few soldiers is that if they get shelled with artillery, you only lose a couple. If they're bunched together, you lose a lot. And the attacker has to attack usually on bikes, like a small squad of people on bikes to do like fast attacks so that the drones have difficulty targeting them. And yeah, there's obviously like downsides of having optic cables attached to drones, and they also use optic cables attached to missiles, I understand. But yeah, so all in all, it's really nasty. It's really gruesome. It's again World War I. You're sitting there in the trenches, waiting for something to happen, and the drones are also like really nasty. Like for instance, if you take a piss, a lot of the drones have infrared thermal sensors, and they can just see like from the sky during the night. They can see the heat that the piss left on the tree, and they know that there are soldiers there. So like what you gotta do is like you gotta dig a hole, you piss in the ground, and then you cover the hole so the drone can't see it. Like the drones are real terrors. Can you imagine? Like at any point, you know, something from the sky can kill you and you don't even know what blew you up. No mustard gas this time. Yeah, no mustard gas. I hate the EMP argument, as if humans aren't vulnerable to radiation. I don't know what that means. That Call of Duty wouldn't sell? Probably it would, though. You can always be the drone operator. Just program AI drone. They're already doing that. Like, they're having AI drones now. So, like, you take a drone, you teach it, okay, this is what a tank looks like, this is what a civilian looks like, this is what a bus looks like, right? And then you program it. And apparently they also use drones for water, so, like, ship combat may change as well. Like, we didn't see actual ship combat, but it does seem that even that is going to be replaced with drones. The story goes that Napoleon failed to broker peace with Russia because he insisted that Poland be a buffer state, and Russia refused. Many of the hussars in his armies were Poles. Well, Poles are good people, it doesn't surprise me. Optic fiber cable shines in the sun, meaning that others can see it and follow the wire to your location. I mean, I think the way it works is that you launch a couple of drones, you do the damage, and you get the fuck out. Right? Like, you don't, I mean, sure, you know, like, they can detect your location. But the drone flies at high altitude. And even if you see where it's coming from, it's like, okay, well, it's coming from the enemy front. Okay, and? Right? Like, if they're trying to go to your location, there's, like, probably machine gun nests and other defensive positions all the way. Like, okay, the drone is coming from behind the enemy trench. I mean, there's a lot of good shit behind the enemy trench. But the problem is you can't get past the enemy trench, you know? What is the range of the optic cable drone? Probably quite small. I think that they have like several disadvantages and advantages. So the advantage is that you can't jam the signal. You can't know that it's there. Like, you can't intercept the signal. The disadvantage is that it doesn't work well in woods, right? So like in a forest, it gets tangled up in the trees, so it doesn't do that well. Doesn't do that well in buildings either. Same thing, like it gets tangled up. And it has limited range. I am curious though, like, what do they do to drone operators? Like, I genuinely think that they're getting the World War II sniper treatment. So, like, for those of you who don't know, snipers were utterly despised in World War II. It's because they were considered to be dishonorable. And so, like, the Nazis gave a reward for snipers. Like, they would give you a medal based on how many kills you have, right? So, like, if you have, like, 10 confirmed kills, you get a medal. If you have, like, 100, you get another. No sniper wanted that, right? Like, no sniper wanted that, to wear that medal. because if the enemy found them with it, a war crime would be committed, basically. Um, the Russians hated snipers so much that there are stories on how they used to drive a tank. Like they tied the sniper down and they shoved his rifle up his ass using a tank. Okay, now that's snipers in World War II. Now drone operators, especially the ones from today, not only do they, like a sniper, they're killing people from afar, and it's almost like a video game. But they also like sometimes upload very sadistic footage on social media with heavy metal songs, right? So like they will upload the footage where the guy is surrendering and they blow him up anyway, like the guy is praying. And they upload it with heavy metal, with rock music, and they're cheering that. Like, there's no way the enemy doesn't get that recordings. And the animosity and the hatred that the enemy gets towards drone operators is probably pretty high. So, like, if you're a drone operator and you get caught, I don't think they will take you prisoner. We will find out about this once the war is over, right? But I'm really curious how they're treating drone operators, if it's similar to World War II snipers. In World War II, at all of the conflicts, snipers were frowned upon. Yeah, but like now imagine how they're feeling about someone that does the same but at a much higher scale. Snipers and assassins are the most fun to play. Like someone asked me once, it's like, what would you want to be in World War II? Like, would you want to be a sniper or would you want to be a soldier, like a grunt? And I was like, well, if you're a grunt, there's like hundreds of grunts, right? So like you blend in with the crowd. If you're a sniper, they will even direct artillery fire to level down entire forests and buildings to get rid of you. So pretty hard to catch those drone operators because they operate from quite a distance. You would think, right? But there have been cases where they were captured. And it's usually captured with surprise attacks, night raids, stuff like that, or the enemy front collapsing. Like, yeah, usually they sit behind. But, like, sometimes if they blitzkrieg the enemy position and they actually manage to break through, they can catch the drone operator. And again, if they're even rare to catch, then I'm pretty sure that the punishment inflicted upon them is a lot more severe. Yeah, it's actually interesting. Bomber and jet pilots don't get much hate. In fact, bombers and jet pilots get a lot of respect for some reason. In World War II, there was the code in the air, they call it, Knights of the Sky. Right? So, like, the Air Force felt itself as being above the soldiers, right? Like, the soldiers are fighting in blood and muck, while the Air Force is up in the sky. And so, there was a code that if a person parachutes, you don't shoot them. I don't know why they had that code. But basically, if you're parachuting out of a plane, the enemy won't shoot you down, right? Because, like, you're going to fall down on the ground and they arrest you there. And there were captains, like, insisting and saying that I will shoot any man that shoots a person that parachutes, right? And this was actually respected in the West, on the Western Front, between the Brits and the Germans. And it's weird that it was respected even in battles on top of London, right? Where if you're a Nazi pilot and you parachute, well, the people down there will arrest you. While if you're a British pilot and you fall down, well, they're just going to send you in another plane. Now, take into account this is in a time when there aren't things such as simulations, right? Like, in order to learn how to fly, you just get like a couple of hours with a trainer and then you're set for combat. And it's sink or swim. And so pilots were extremely valuable. And yet, they respected the code, even though they had ample reasons not to. But when they got on the Eastern Front, apparently, like, the Russians would target the parachuting officers on purpose, and so that code started not being respected. I don't know if it's a war crime. I don't think it's a war crime. I would have to check. I mean, theoretically, you can justify that the person parachuting is surrendering, but, like, probably not, because they have a sidearm. Although, usually when they're on the ground, right, like, they're on the ground with a military uniform, and they're going to be arrested, right? Like, they're going to be taken prisoner. Pilots are definitely not the same as paratroopers. I mean, I know they use the same mechanism, right? Like they're parachuting off a plane, so I can understand why you're making the mistake. But it's a different thing when you have like brigades of soldiers jumping out of planes, right? So like now you have an invasion force of thousands of men that are dropping from the sky, like Operation Market Garden. And it's a completely different thing when a fighter pilot or a bomber pilot jumps off a plane with a parachute, right? And the difference is, I mean, practical, like from a utilitarian point of view. One is an invasion force, and the other is just like one guy that's going to fall down and he's going to get arrested. Like no one expects that the fighter pilot is going to, use a AR-15 and start defending himself against the enemy, right? No, he's probably got the sidearm, and like I would assume he would try to escape, but most likely he would surrender. So yeah, like paratroopers and pilots parachuting are like two different things. Even though like it's the same process. It's a man with a parachute. I get it. Anyway, right. Let's end it here because I got other videos to upload. Thank you guys for watching. Uh, Thank you for being here, and the super chats were lovely. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.